U.S. progressives reject Republican push against Ilhan Omar. Rights groups demand Biden close inhumane ICE detention centers. Student organization holds anti-Thanksgiving feast to bring attention to Indigenous history. Israel kills Palestinian teen in West Bank. Dangerous rhetoric stoking nuclear tensions, says UN chief. British Muslims are facing the worst of the cost of living and climate crisis. From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. Our top story tonight. Boos erupted when Republican House Leader Kevin McCarthy mentioned American Muslim Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. At a weekend Republican Jewish Coalition conference, McCarthy promised to remove Omar from the House Foreign Affairs Committee because of her criticism of Israel. His pledge sparked an outcry from progressive and American Muslim advocates who say the attack on Omar was unjustified. Robert McCaw is the Director of Government Affairs at the Council on American Islamic Relations. He said both parties' leaders in Congress should reject the political attack on Omar. McCaw added that members of Congress should not be silenced for daring to consistently speak out against human rights violations. Several prominent progressives rushed to Omar's defense when McCarthy made those remarks. U.S. Representative Cori Bush urged McCarthy to do better and tweeted, "Islamophobia, racism, religious discrimination, and hate have no place in the people's house or our society." Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, accused Republicans of weaponizing xenophobia and racism to undermine Omar's voice. On Monday, former Attorney General William Barr called for a new Republican Party leader, warning that the former President Donald Trump will burn the whole House down. Barr wrote a scathing op-ed published in the New York Post Monday. He said Trump's egoism makes him unable to think of a political party as anything but an extension of himself, a cult of personality. Barr's comments come in the wake of the 2022 midterm elections. An expected red wave in the House didn't quite materialize despite Republicans taking control of the chamber. Some pre-election polls had suggested Republicans could capture the Senate, which didn't happen. More than 100 rights organizations on Monday pressured U.S. President Joe Biden to end the mass detention of migrants. The 114 groups described the practice as inhumane, unjust, unnecessary, and fiscally irresponsible. They wrote a letter to the Biden administration urging him to recognize shared values of humanity and compassion, requiring the dismantling of our system of mass immigrant detention. They urged the administration to close immigration and customs enforcement detention sites and prevent their expansion or development of new sites. The organizations highlighted some examples of abuse documented at ICE facilities nationwide. At the Baker County Detention Center in Florida, detainees have been pepper sprayed while already pinned down or confined and targeted with anti-Black racist slurs and harassment. Somali residents in Barron, a city in rural Wisconsin, are withdrawing a request to play an amplified Muslim call to prayer from two mosques. The move comes after the idea drew opposition from non-Muslim residents at a recent city council meeting. Barron is home to around 470 Somali refugees, according to 2020 U.S. Census data. That population has grown since the 1990s, when refugees originally moved to Barron for work at a turkey processing plant owned by Jenny O. Isaac Mohammed, who fled Somalia and became a U.S. citizen in 2018, was elected to the city council last spring. He told Wisconsin Public Radio members of Barron's Somali community asked if the city's 2 mosques could play an amplified call to prayer. During the public comments portion of the meeting, the November 15 council meeting, 14 speakers were opposed to the request. Last spring, Minneapolis became the first major U.S. city to allow the Muslim call to prayer to be broadcast publicly at 24 mosques. Construction is underway to build the largest dining hall on Brown University's campus with a dedicated kosher area, enhanced halal station, and an allergy-friendly kitchen. The new sharp refectory spaces will open in time for the fall 2023 semester. They will provide easy access to high-quality meals for students who observe Jewish and Islamic dietary laws or who have food allergies and specific dietary requirements. George Barboza, Brown's Vice President of Dining Programs, said that the facilities are part of the university's commitment to support the community among students from diverse religious identities and cultural backgrounds. The university currently offers dining options for students with allergies and those who follow Jewish and Islamic dietary laws through enrollment in specific dining programs. Those programs often involve advanced ordering or outsourcing to caterers. The new dining hall will allow students of many religious backgrounds and ethnicities to share meals in a communal space. On Thursday, a University of Texas student group held an anti-Thanksgiving feast. The campus's Native American and Indigenous collective organized the event. Brian Nelly Flores, co-director of the collective, said, "For us, it's not a day of giving thanks, it's a day of mourning." Thursday's anti-Thanksgiving event provided a meal and place of gathering for Native American identifying members of the university community. According to fall figures, 0.1% of the University of Texas students identify as American Indians or Alaskan Natives. November is Native American Heritage Month. Thanksgiving was proclaimed a public holiday in the U.S. in 1789. Many associate the holiday with festive feathers, turkey, and jolly pilgrims. But historically, Thanksgiving Day is a painful commemoration for Native Americans as the tradition traces back to European colonization of native lands. Israel kills Palestinian teen in West Bank. Details come after the break. Stay tuned, and we will be right back after these messages.
A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today.
I am what hunger looks like in America.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. 16-year-old Ahmed Amjad Shahade died from an Israeli bullet that penetrated his heart in the city of Nablus, the Palestinian Health Ministry reports. The ministry said 4 more people were wounded, one of them in critical condition. Emergency personnel and the Palestinian Red Crescent Society told Anadolu agency Israeli soldiers opened fire on health workers taking care of the wounded. Within hours of Shahade's murder, 2 explosions rocked Jerusalem, officials said. A 16-year-old Jewish boy, Aryeh Shkupak, was killed in an explosion and 12 others were injured. The sole Jewish member of an Arab political party said Wednesday the Jewish boy was the victim of the occupation. At least 200 Palestinians, including more than 50 children, have been killed by Israel in the territories illegally occupied this year. It has been the deadliest year for Palestinians since 2006. More than 25 people were also killed on the Israeli side. The death toll from an earthquake in Indonesia this week climbed to 268, local government officials in West Java province said Tuesday. Army official Suharyanto, the head of the Regional Disaster Management Agency, said 122 bodies have been identified and 151 people are still missing. The earthquake displaced over 58,000 people, injured more than 1,000, and damaged at least 22,000 houses, the agency reports. 2 hospitals still are operating despite being affected by the disaster. Additional field tents have been set up around the hospital. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres warned Tuesday against dangerous rhetoric stoking tensions among nuclear-armed rivals. He was addressing a meeting in Morocco and the UN Alliance of Civilizations, which aims to galvanize international action against extremism. Guterres said growing divisions are threatening global peace and security. This comes at a time when the world is dangerously close to the edge on climate, which hate speech and disinformation are proliferating, he added. Russia's war in Ukraine is nearing its 10th month with no end in sight, fanning nuclear fears. Guterres warned that forces of discord were waking up old demons, including anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. It's the first time the group has met on African soil. Energy price hikes, climate change, and the increasing cost of living are hurting the most economically underprivileged Britons, including large swaths of British Muslims. According to the Office of National Statistics, Muslims have the lowest employment rate of all religious groups across England and Wales. Between 2009 and 2011, 50% of Muslim households lived on or below the poverty line. That is more than twice the national average of 18%, data shows. A new report by Muslim Census found 1 in 5 British Muslims has used a food bank since August 2021, and more than 75% note the crisis has impacted their mental health. A recent Bristol University study investigated the challenges faced by Muslims in the British labour market. Dr. Sueda Metawalli's research found that Muslims experience the greatest faith penalty relative to any other religious group, regardless of their ethnicity. Friends of the Earth recently examined who suffers most from heat waves in the UK. The group report identified the top 20% of most socially vulnerable neighborhoods frequently are areas with a high Muslim population. Bharatiya Janata Party spokesman Savio Rodriguez asked the Indian government, football associations, and Indians traveling to Qatar to boycott the FIFA World Cup. Rodriguez's comments came in response to Qatar inviting controversial Indian Islamic scholar Dr. Zakir Naik to the tournament. Naik is an Indian citizen who now lives in self-exile in Malaysia after the Indian government banned his channel Peace TV. In March, India declared Zakir Naik's founded Islamic Research Foundation an unlawful association and banned it for 5 years. Pakistani artist Zulfikar Ali Bhutto Jr. lent support to Palestinian activist Mohammed al-Kurd by pulling his film Heaven 58 from a film festival hosted by Germany's Goethe Institute. He said his decision was based on the institute's recent move to disinvite al-Kurd from a summit. Bhutto made the announcement on Instagram Tuesday to show solidarity with al-Kurd and the Palestinian people. He said the institute's decision to remove the Palestinian activist shows its anti-Palestine and pro-Zionist stance. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment. So stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. Let's have a look at our in-depth analysis segment.
Thank you, Samana. America is heading towards Thanksgiving. Will Turkey will be on the table, or there will be history? We have been conflicted about history, statues, what need to be taught, what need to be in the classroom. But we have someone who has grown up reading and writing and enjoying history. Please welcome Dave Kindy.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me today.
Welcome to Muslim Network TV. So tell me, when you were growing up, what were they teaching you in school about the savage Indians being cornered, or what were you learning about Thanksgiving?
Oh, they didn't go too much about the savages back then. However, I did learn that from watching 1950s and 1960s cowboy movies on television, and we got a rather distorted view of it. However, when I was a child, what they were teaching us about Thanksgiving was pilgrims with belt buckles on their hats, and Native Americans with these big full headdresses, and everybody sitting down around a big table and then big smiles and having Thanksgiving turkey. And the reality is what we were taught in grade school as children is quite a bit different than the real truth about the holiday.
You have written in the Smithsonian magazine, which is because of its history and the institution is pretty authoritative. Tell us that how a couple of lines about Thanksgiving grew up to be such a major myth and a holiday.
It's really quite interesting. It follows several different paths. The tradition of the original Thanksgiving, what we call the first Thanksgiving in 1621 and here in Plymouth, was actually a harvest feast, which probably happened in late September or early October, not in November like we have it here today, like we celebrate today. The Pilgrims were very appreciative of the bounty that they had after a terrible winter. They had been decimated with illness. They lost half of the settlers from sickness, and but their crops were good that summer, and they were very happy with that, and they wanted to celebrate which was a common tradition in England, and also among the Wampanoag Indians, that the Native Americans that lived here. Celebrating the harvest was also a very popular event. So it was something that many cultures do across time to be thankful for the bounty that they have at a given time, because the weather and conditions can be so unpredictable. It kind of got a little twisted following down the line. What happened was they did it for 1 year. It was not repeated. There was a Thanksgiving that the Pilgrims did a couple of years later, but that was because of a spring event where they had a drought and had very little rain, and all of a sudden they got rain in the summer, and it saved all their crops. So they were very thankful for that. And somehow the two kind of got mixed up and confused over the course of time. And a lot of the images that we have today about Thanksgiving come from our Victorian era here in the United States, and kind of like a little bit of an unusual look at how things actually happened back then.
So you mentioned that historically, only one person has mentioned in 2-3 lines about that event 400 years ago today. Then how the rest of the history has been built around it. I mean, in your article, you talk about the other people, and you also talk about what Native people thought about it, how their thinking of the 400 years came to us.
It's rather interesting. In New England, there was a tradition around the 18th century into the 1700s where some people celebrated like they perceived the pilgrims did, and that tradition kind of kept going on. There was a woman, and I've forgotten her name at the top of my head, but she pushed for years to get the United States government to recognize Thanksgiving as a holiday. This is back in the 19th century. And Abraham Lincoln eventually did do so. He did recognize it as a holiday in November, which also happened about the same time as the Gettysburg Address, which was in November too. So things kind of snowballed from there. And it really kind of got confused. It all happens about the time that in a very young United States, when people are trying to come up with a foundation ideology, if you will. How did things get started here? And they turned to Plymouth, Massachusetts, because that was the first surviving colony, English colony. And it sort of grew from there. One of the things that we don't know an awful lot. Edward Winslow wrote the like a very short paragraph about this celebration, this harvest feast that they had, and that's really all we have to go on. William Bradford, rather, the governor, also wrote about the bounty of that fall, but not specifically mentioning the harvest feast. But he does mention wild turkeys in his account, which is interesting because that's the only reference that we have to the fact that turkey might have been served at the first Thanksgiving or the first feast in 1621.
Now, you mentioned in 1970, Native people started observing Thanksgiving as a day of mourning. Who started that, and was there a big discussion, or one person started it and gradually it was caught on?
It started in 1970 when they were having a 350th observation of the Pilgrim's Landing in 1620. And they had invited one of the local Wampanoag representatives to come down and speak. And he had prepared a whole speech talking about what Thanksgiving meant to his people. And it was not the glorified speech of the Pilgrim myth that the people wanted to hear. So they censored him. And I apologize, I've forgotten his name at the moment, but what he ended up doing was, in protest, was going to another location in Plymouth and basically standing up and reading his speech, which talks about the genocide, that talks about the colonization, that talks about the effects of Christianity, the effects of cultural destruction on the Wampanoag people and the Native American peoples in across America, from resulting from what the Thanksgiving is. They point out, a lot of the Wampanoag people today point out, we don't have any bones with against the Pilgrims. They were generally fair with us, and we were generally fair with them. It's what it came to represent afterwards, because none of them knew what was coming next. But the fact is that the English continued and the Europeans continued settlement of the country and displaced a lot of Native Americans and took their lands.
A question about historiography, Dave. You mentioned that pretty soon 90% of the tribes were wiped out because of the diseases. Who was counting people at that time?
It's only rough guesses by the historians and by the people who Wampanoag people today who keep the history of their tribe. It's not known. We've seen estimates as many as 30,000 people to as many as 100,000 people at that time, and the Wampanoag stretched from Maine down to Cape Cod and onto Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, and into what are parts of Rhode Island today. And it was a little bit different than, it was a kind of a confederation, if you will. Each community was sort of like a separate entity unto itself, but they paid homage to one chief who was, in this case, Massasoit or Wemessican, who lived in Pokanoket, which is located in Bristol, Rhode Island today. And there was like 70 different communities. So it was like 70 different groups of Wampanoags that were combined into this one group. In about 1616, because the Native Americans had no immunities to European diseases, the illnesses started to spread through the Wampanoag people. It only initially impacted the coastline. So pretty much only the Wampanoag were hit from 1616 to 1619. And they lost, there were some horrible deaths from, illnesses that you or I today would survive because of vaccinations or because of, natural immunities that we've built up over the years. And, smallpox and other diseases of the such. And it wiped out, as they estimate, as many as 90% of the population of Wampanoag. And this is the interesting thing about why the Wampanoag and the Pilgrims came together, was because the Pilgrims were only a small group. They started out with about 100 people. By the end of the first winter, they were down to 50 because of illness. The Wampanoag had seen their numbers decreased dramatically, as I said, down by 90%, and both were in a weakened position and needed help from somebody to be able to survive. So it was really providential that the Pilgrims landed here in Plymouth where they did, because if they had landed anywhere else, they probably would have been met with a firmer resistance. In this case, the Wampanoag, who are generally a peaceful people, recognizing that the English had some power, were willing to sign a defense treaty with them. That it was a mutual defense treaty. If either one would be attacked, then they would be supported by the other. And in the case of the Wampanoags, they were concerned about Narragansett tribe, which had not been decimated by the illnesses that the Wampanoag had been hit with, and were very much stronger. And they were sort of natural enemies. They were always at kind of like fighting amongst each other. So they needed help to fend off that incursion.
Well, Dave, one of the myths which you can further explore is that in Muslim community in America, it is known that one of the persons signing on behalf of the native people, his name was Mustafa, which is the name of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him also. So I don't know how history continues to evolve on these issues, but what is the state of what is being taught at the school level? Is it subject to the debate and fights?
That I have not heard about. Mostly they deal with the relationship right now between the Wampanoag and the Pilgrim community. But that's a new one for me, and I'm going to have to explore that and find out more about it, because I was not aware of it. Likely, if he was a Muslim, he probably kept quiet about it, because the Pilgrims, even though they believed in religious freedom, they believed in religious freedom for themselves, not necessarily for others.
Well, thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving to you, Dave.
Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Don't eat too much. I probably will.
Okay.
Thank you so much. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube and Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. We'll see you on Friday, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, and have a happy holiday and good night.